Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joined our lovely webinar today. Thank you for taking this 1 hour out of your day to be with us today. And the topic that we will be discussing is how to meet today's digital demands without replacing your legacy stack. We'll see how that discussion goes. A few housekeeping comments just before we get started. Feel free to submit your questions into the chat box or into the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring that and take them at the end of the webinar. We really would like to hear your inputs, so by all means, submit your questions there. And I'd like to welcome with me today, Werner Coetzee, Head of Innovation Hub at Data Sciences Corporation. Werner, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Danna. What a pleasure to be here, and it's really good to finally be able to chat with you online, and we really looking forward to the discussion. So just a little bit of background. So maybe by the accent you can tell I'm based in South Africa, Johannesburg. At the moment it's a good balmy 33 degrees. So hope you can't hear the aircon in the background. But we Data Sciences Corporation is we're about 10 years old now, and we're a infrastructure systems integrator, but we've also started working with our customers, being inspired by data into different areas within the data stack. So our pedigree is infrastructure and hardware, but we also recently partnered with yourselves and been working on making that value proposition from being inspired by data into the digital integration hub era, and really looking at how we can assist customers in leveraging more value from their data investments. And we really excited about the prospect of this. We really believe that there's a massive gap in the market, and this is definitely something that we're excited about and looking forward to spending time and developing with our customers.
Yeah, indeed. It's a bit of a cliche to say that data is the new oil, but I think that people really are, especially in enterprises, large enterprises, are really realizing that data is the driver of modern applications and is really driving innovation today. So the ability to access data efficiently is key to organizations' ability to deliver modern services in an efficient way. And we'll be discussing that a bit more. Just a quick word about myself, everybody. I'm Danna. Thank you. I'm heading up a product marketing here at Gigaspaces. So a pleasure to be here with you today. So Werner did mention, plunged right in and mentioned the Digital Integration Hub. I'm not sure how many of you out there are familiar with this architecture. It's actually a relatively new architecture that was explored and coined by Gartner 2 to 3 years ago. And I'm not going to read the exact definition, which appears here on the screen, but ultimately, a digital integration hub is a middleware layer that provides very high operational data accessibility to consuming applications and services within the organization. Think of an architecture that knows how to consolidate data in real time from multiple underlying backend systems or data sources, make them highly available in a very highly performant data layer, and then deliver the data as data APIs to consuming services. Now, a digital integration hub plays in the area of not only of modernization, but into other architectures that many of you may have already heard about: data fabric, data mesh, and also plays into the concept of data democratization in organizations, because ultimately it's all about making data from multiple systems accessible to modern services and consumable to data engineering teams and data application and applications that rely on real-time data. So when I'm not sure, I know that you've given some great videos as well about the Digital Integration Hub, whether you wanted to add some more color about this this solution, this platform.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It is something that is, I guess, a new take on how we put together our data strategy in terms of making it accessible. And we've over the last, I guess, 10 years, we've kind of gone from big data, analytical data, and there's a lot of focus on the power of that. And we Gartner themselves would talk about the velocity and the variety of data and the volume of data, right? And typically over the last decade or so, organizations have been heavily focused on the analytical portion. What is that data mining giving to us, and trying to derive value out of these mountains of data, and the patterns for those are pretty well set. And how to leverage them, and how to work with them. And in terms of data warehousing, data lakes, the introduction of unstructured data into organizations becoming more and more prevalent, how to deal with that and how to leverage value out of that. Today we're living in a world where on demand is really, everything is about in the now. And with the advent of technologies now like artificial intelligence, which has spawned a whole bunch of kind of subcategories of how we would actually consume the data through these new artificial intelligence platforms, the focus out of analytical data is also shifting, and there's a realization that we need to address real-time application data. So analytical systems are inherently, there's feeds and ETL processes, and very often actually batch driven processes. So the way to work with those is definitely a little bit more lagging in a certain way. Whereas what we want to focus on, where the Digital Integration Hub is something key, is about systems of record, and really harnessing or liberating your systems of record out there. But they also have their inherent challenges, and this is what we're going to be discussing, looking at those pain points of this different side of your data, which has been kind of slightly ignored, I guess, to a certain extent over the last while. And suddenly we're going, well, I've got all this real-time data. What do I do with this, and what can I do with that? And that's really what the art of the possible is with looking at a digital integration hub.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're going to be moving on to the enablers, the real-time enablers for modernization, and also customer pain points. But to your point, one of the things that we come across frequently in our customer conversations is that exact topic of real-time versus analytical. I think that there's an extensive focus on analytics and BI. It definitely has its place under the sun, and it probably takes up most of the attention within data science and data engineering teams. But as you rightly said, the focus and the recognition of the need for real-time data to drive real-time use cases, and we're going to be focusing later on some specific segments in retail, insurance, financial services, which rely on customer-facing real-time services and have to be highly responsive and highly performant and rely on real-time data. There's that side of things which we'll be discussing, and also why in fact can't the systems that are serving the analytical side of things and the BI side of things, why can't they just be repurposed for real time? So that's also one of the things that I think would be interesting, because I hear a lot of confusion from very experienced data scientists and data engineers around this topic. So it would be good to explore. And when we think of customer pain points, what do you think are the most pressing business pain points around data accessibility, siloed data that organizations are facing in your daily interactions with your customers?
Yeah, I mean, we so we have the, I don't know if it's the advantage or that, but when we speak to customers, we come from the kind of the plumbing side of data, right? We come from the actual storage arrays and where the data lives and how that's serviced, and we can very quickly see how systems of record and data lakes and analytical platforms are bottlenecking at certain areas because of the way that the applications sometimes are developed, or how they have been developed in the past. And what this leads to is this kind of swamp of legacy platforms and that we collect, so it's kind of like my drawer back at home, and I've got a whole bunch of stuff. We all have a drawer where you've got these old things lying around, but they're still very important to you. So I guess it's almost in a similar way. Organizations over time build numerous systems, and these legacy systems were built on architectural patterns that didn't necessarily cater for integration or data mobility or microservices, or even an API kind of ecosystem. So that data is still valuable. It's still relevant today, and you still have to maintain and look after it, and make sure that it's usable. But it's kind of locked into this system because of the pace in which technology has changed, and the technical debt that you start incurring over time, just by the sheer nature of this. So when we think of organizations potentially that are still running on mainframe, which is still a very, very core component to, for instance, in the banking industry and some of the retailers, it's a very specialized technology, and it does add layers of complexity to try and decouple that data or extract that data and make it usable in a different form, in a more digital front end form. So those challenges across the board, legacy data, and I mean, that's the theme that we're talking about today, or legacy systems. And we're talking specifically about systems of record, operational, transactional data, not so much the analytical side of this. Organizations, are battling in getting access to that in a constructive, simple way to make that data available. And they often find themselves in this fight between what is the master data of, in terms of across the organization, and trying to get that unified look and feel across what is, our systems of record, looking at is quite challenging. And if you just think about organizations that have gone on an acquisition, that merger of different organizations, platforms, and data platforms just compounds that problem, right? Because you're kind of inheriting their legacy systems as well, and it makes it even more difficult to leverage that investment that's been made. So I really think those are, that's one of the key ones, is the separate platforms, the separate technologies that don't necessarily talk to one another very nicely. And then just the sheer quality of the data sometimes, to make sure that data is actually accurate. Dirty data is probably one of the other key factors that can bring risk into your decision-making system or into your real-time system. So those two components, legacy and dirty data, legacy system, should I say, and dirty data, I would think is probably some of the biggest pain points that organizations sit with today.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is M&A is kind of I wouldn't say a driver. Driver is usually something that's positive, but translates into very siloed, fractured data IT environments, and also creates a lack of visibility across an organization. And also the dirty data that you mentioned. I also wanted to highlight two additional points that we've been hearing as well. Specifically regarding legacy systems, you mentioned mainframes. What we're hearing a lot also is that the skill sets needed to maintain legacy applications are becoming are very much in short supply.
They're retiring Very tiring.
Yeah, exactly. So the engineers used to develop and maintain these systems are retiring. And modern developers, or the developers who are developing modern applications, rely on these legacy environments to get data. So there needs to be some kind of bridge that will make data accessible without necessarily shutting down the legacy systems. I mean, from what we hear, many organizations are in a rock, somewhere between a rock and a hard place, because they would like to ultimately move away from legacy systems, but because the business core, the enterprise business applications, their core business applications are running on these systems, you rightly mentioned the risk in tampering with them and the complexity of revamping that or re-engineering and re-architecting those systems is just such a huge undertaking.
Yeah.
that there has to be other ways that will enable this, and this is one of the things that we are going to explore. Just coming back to real time. I mean, we did mention analytics, and I did want to also mention that I think there's increasing overlap. It's not completely, the need for real time is becoming increasingly evident also in analytics as well, because many real-time decisioning situations rely on analytics or analytical kind of computations that take place, or modeling type of applications that take place in real time, and often they will combine data that resides in a data lake with real-time streams, and deliver information that is relevant to a here and now decision. So there definitely is increasing need for real time in analytics as well, alongside those other operational real time applications that we also mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, often, there's certain areas in analytics where, the data is actually aggregated, data or aggregated constructs, and, that's derived from other sources of data. And those aggregates, become valuable when you can compare it or, position it with real-time data. And actually start analyzing, what's currently happening against historical patterns and things like that, and feeding it into those type of models. So you can think of risk models, real-time risk models versus what's out there. Loyalty programs based on historical data. Where you are now. So absolutely, there is a convergence between those two worlds, as the value of that analytical data is absolutely still there. It's really relevant. It's bringing these two together so that they not necessarily disproportionate to each other, or that they're in different camps. It's how do we then allow them to be used in conjunction.
Right. So I wanted, in the next part of our chat, to actually focus on 3 segments, to do a bit of a deep dive, and discuss and understand the pain points and use cases relating to 3 specific segments. It's something that we're seeing in these segments, and I know that you've also had experience. And we'll start off with retail. So retail, highly competitive industry. Many of the organizations that support retail started off in brick and mortar, in a brick and mortar environment, and overlaid their brick and mortar operations with digital. You mentioned M&A. Many organizations have grown through M&A. So this combination of digital, brick and mortar, regional dispersion, geographical spread, M&A has created a very kind of messy environment where I think that there's a lot of a really messy kind of
No, it is.
data
It's
situation. And
chaotic.
we do know, yeah, we do know that retail relies, it is very, very much reliant on split-second responsiveness for consumer-facing applications.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to hear your insights on
Yeah. So
some of the
I
key
think
pain points in retail.
yeah, so I think just as a disclaimer, I'm absolutely not an expert in retail or insurance or in finance at all. But really the perspective that we bring from our standpoint is understanding that's the system pain points, and we're seeing how that's having an impact on our customers. We service retailers and insurance organizations and large financial institutes. So we might not be industry experts per se, but we do understand what data means to those organizations, and in the context of their business, and we try and make it our job to live that with them and walk that journey with them. So in retail specifically, if we just kind of think of the process, it's really all about supply chain, and with interacting with our customers, we've seen that supply chains are becoming a lot more less structured, more distributed, and effectively turning into supply chain networks or supply networks in that way. And each part has to be, very much kept together and up to date in terms of stock levels, of where certain products are distributed across the entire network, and how that affects the distribution through the various channels that those retailers might be utilizing. To your point, they might still have a very significant distribution, through brick and mortar, or they outsourcing. Certain retailers will outsource their supply chain to people who look after warehousing and distribution and all of those type of activities as well. So you have this real mix, like you say, and kind of different patterns and how to play that out. And then for instance, you have very fast just-in-time delivery type of constraints, where the modern customer, especially your I would kind of call it your researching customer, is looking for something very specific. Lady looking to buy shoes for a specific wedding or specific event, and they have to be the right color. And when that stock is not there, what's happened? Are you losing that sale? Is there a way to actually see, well, we've got stock in a different location, and what's the way that we can actually then service that customer's need, even though the kind of original query that she had, or the original way of transaction that she was envisioning, could not be satisfied through the the store or the storefront that she was looking at. And really that's where the ability to bring real-time data that's event driven into the system will allow that flexibility, where you can almost mid-flight, in the process of purchase and delivery, be agile and change to the customer's whim, and at some cases even post-shipping make an adjustment to that. So maybe that's still a little way away, but that's where the consumer's mind is starting to go. She didn't want red shoes because the bridesmaid is also wearing red shoes, so now she has to change and have a different color. So how do you intercept that change of your consumer? And it is possible, but this is what we're starting to see is driving that market.
Yeah, I must say your example hit the nail on the head, because I was recently buying shoes online. And I needed to check which branch had the size that I needed.
Yeah.
And I had to go into each branch separately, and there were different types of shoes, different shoe models or whatever.
Yeah.
And each branch had a different kind of held different inventory, and I couldn't get a complete view of which shoes were at which branch in one screen. And it was driving me nuts. I was like clicking all over the page, and then I couldn't remember which shoes I wanted. No. Needless to say, I did not buy the shoes.
Correct. And that's because the purchasing journey from the consumer became frustrating and it became complex.
Yeah.
And the nature of modern, the modern consumer is that the product set and the appetite in what we purchase is way more complex, right? We have a lot more choice, not just in product, but in vendors that we, or merchants that we interact with. Each one applying a different way of attracting us. And really that's why, as you mentioned, the competition is so high, and to stay relevant to your customer is really key. So, e-commerce, and I guess in the old sense of it, what we see today is not even anything related to what it was originally conceived, right? So
another sorry to interrupt. Another business case that that actually plays into exactly what you were saying in terms of how do you what we're seeing today in online digital online retail is very different to what it was, is that when you relate to the kind of IT environments that you mentioned earlier, very fragmented, you might have an organization that has various brands, wants to cater to people in different geographies, wants to offer a customized experience. But when a consumer goes into a store of one brand and then into a store owned by the same organization of another brand, they would not be able to, without a data-driven, really synthesized view of that customer, they wouldn't be able to get the legacy program that they're entitled to, or the discount rate that they're entitled to, or special offers, customized offers that they're entitled to. That's one case. And then the other that I think that is also related is just related as well to this kind of multi-brand situation with a very fragmented backend, is that you have kind of a corporate that wants to roll out an offer consistently across all of their brands. They might be maintaining, same inventory or similar inventory or same part in multiple brands, and then they want to create an offer. How do they do that if they've got a fragmented backend? So happy to get your
so I mean, and that's the thing, and it all comes down to contextualizing that consumer or market and how they want to interact with that, and that context is created within the data structure, right? It's how we're able to provide a layered understanding and create a richer experience for consumers and actually at different levels of the business. As you go through the layers of that, each layer can benefit of creating the context. So to provide that endpoint context that is pertinent to the consumer, it's a layered approach. It's a compounded effect all the way through the organization. So understanding where all of those points of contact is and how those fragmented systems can actually contribute to that context shift between the different customers and what their needs are, or from a brand perspective, is really what we're trying to achieve, right? And this has to be done in real time. So once again, your systems might not be legacy per se, but they need to change and be able to adapt to provide the data at the right time for the correct area, whether this is at logistical area, whether it's the metrics in terms of telemetry data that's keeping track of how cool the fridges are running in your stores and things like that. All of this can actually contribute to making that experience richer and giving you the ability to then actually segment out to the correct areas that need it.
Yeah. Ultimately, the key is having this consolidated view of data from multiple systems, which can be delivered in real time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I see that we're moving along in terms of time, so I did want to get to the next segment, which is insurance.
Yes.
And here too, insurance is a very conservative, it's a conservative business. But there has been a lot of work done in digitizing, especially in terms of customer interaction. And when I think of insurance use cases, I think of customer-facing use cases, for example, the ability to automate and digitize, for example, claim submission. And use cases that are not necessarily customer facing, but which also rely heavily on real-time data is customer service.
Yes.
Getting that 360 view of the customer. If I'm on a call with my insurance representative, do they really know what other insurance products have got from that same vendor?
Yeah.
Risk modeling.
Absolutely.
Those kind of use cases which are highly reliant on real-time data.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the days of getting, submitting your kind of details and then waiting for somebody to call you back and then provide you with a quote. Those days are numbered, really, and it really comes down to data about yourself might already be living within, of your customer, might be living in that organization. So those insurers who are adopting a more technological digital approach to their interaction, they're starting to utilize specific algorithmic bots, either in the chatbot environment or within the risk modeling environment or within the customer service environment. Things like sentiment analysis on your interaction over the phone, real-time sentiment analysis. How do we get that data in, and how do we act on those events as well? And these areas are changing the way in which a consumer and the insurer are actually interacting and working together. So with that, once again, there's complete new sets of information and data that are being exposed through modern technologies driving artificial intelligence models becoming way more accessible, the compute power to actually leverage these is also becoming more accessible. So it's opening up all of these new avenues that you can layer into existing the existing information that you have about your organization, and really change the turnaround time of how you interact with your customer, how you get information out of them, how you do the risk analytics, things like processing images or audio files, this is the future, right? And being able to intercept that loop with an integration or a digital integration hub to kind of feed that environment from your systems of record, and pairing it with these new sources of data is exposing new intersections. And new intersections of information is where innovation happens, right? That's where the new stuff is. It's not the one or the other, it's when they get combined that those synergies are explored.
Yeah, as really seeing the use of multiple sources of data, as you see, having an impact, also directly an impact on revenue. We've spoken to several customers, organizations in the insurance space, and from what I understand, the ability to close a ticket, a help ticket, is one of the key KPIs on how service is measured. In fact, it's really interesting. I was renewing my insurance for my car last week, and I could compare service KPIs that was done by the ombudsman of the insurance authority here, and how quickly the insurer responded to and resolved claims. So this is something clearly that they're also being checked on by regulatory bodies. It's not only to provide good customer service, it's also something that insurers are being measured on. And the ability indeed to use real-time data in service calls in order to get access to data that can resolve problems is definitely a revenue driver. Our full disclosure, I actually renewed insurance with the insurance company that had the highest score, customer service score.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, So it definitely affected my decision making.
Yeah.
But then also the ability to upsell new products
Yes.
to customers by being able to understand what their entire insurance estate is. I know that currently that's not always the case. Insurance companies operate in different business units. So you'll have life, car, property
Yeah.
insurance all being run by different units.
Yeah.
And the ability to cross-sell in a live situation by a customer representative hasn't been utilized fully because these organizations don't have access to real-time data at their fingertips.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting.
I mean, you touch on a point for myself as well personally. You know, I think it's with everything we even as individuals we strive for efficiency in our lives, right? There's certain levels of efficiency, and things like insurance, we absolutely, you know, you need that, but you also want it to be optimized. It changes as your you know, as you change or your needs change, and it would be great, you know, to have to have that level of I guess dexterity within the product suite, to, you know, where optimizations or new products are recommended based on, you know, changes in your situation and things like that. You know, because honestly what happens is, and I mean, I'm a prime example, is I, you know, do something and then 2 years later I realize that, oh, you know, my whole situation has changed. And, I need to relook at that, you know. So how can you know, an industry that is actually so service, you know, consumer service driven, how can they extend into that and actually start you know, getting a better understanding of when these things are pertinent and happening, you know, and that's where data coupled with modeling, you know, where you can actually infer certain conditions within a person's life changing to then drive a certain event to, you know, to be, or certain actions to be
that's
taken.
phenomenal. Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, like you say, having that access to data can drive different systems to, you know, to actually be more relevant to the, you know, to the consumer itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the last segment that we had mentioned in our prep discussions leading up to the webinar was actually financial services.
Yes.
So we've got enough time to dedicate just a few minutes to that as well. And here again, I think the understanding for real time is quite easily understood, right? You've got trading, we're all banking consumers, we all bank online, and you expect that experience to be super, super quick, super, super accurate, and omni-channel. So whether you're on your desktop, your tablet, or your phone, you expect the data that is being delivered to those three applications, because at the end of the day, those are three different applications, to be synchronized to the millisecond. So this is very, very important, that banking systems can leverage real time to deliver that optimal user experience and customer experience.
Yeah, I think, you know, those use cases, you can augment them with, you know, fraud detection, you know, and a few others as well, you know, security and banking, regulatory compliances and those things. So the risk management side of it as well. All of those areas are, you know, potentially real time driven. And you know, we see it when high trading periods come in, you know, it's phenomenal, the volume of transactions that is, you know, I guess sent across the entire banking ecosystem within a large organization and a large bank. And it's actually quite fascinating because, you know, banking is, I guess, in my, you know, at least in my experience, and could be wrong, but it's probably one of the most complex, or the most complex compute and systems environment, you know, on you know, that you find in the private sector. So, you know, to create that, I would almost want to say, that illusion that you've got a single pane of glass as a customer through your app, through your web interface, and you click here and you click there, and then things happen. The you know, the levels of abstraction that you have to go through to actually make that a reality is something quite significant. And you know, banks, I must say, I guess to a certain degree, some of them have really done very well, especially some of the legacy banks. And then, you know, some of the next generation financial institutes are taking a very different view on on banking and how they provide their products to to their customers. They're typically kind of born in the cloud,
Right.
whereas so that playing field is very different, and the abilities that they have, harnessing modern application designs. They're not encumbered by some of the the legacy platforms that a bank that's been around for 100 years might have.
Yeah. In that regard, I mean, it's interesting to see that deregulation in financial services has really created a lot of competition for those more well-established traditional banks who've had to move into digital rapidly, without having that, without being born in the cloud, without being born in the modern world, as you said. And I mean, we've helped banks create synthesized data and consolidate data from their backend systems in order to provide that phenomenal end user experience, and also to meet regulations for open banking. Some banks have to comply and to provide data about their customers to these upstart fintech service companies who provide financial services and who actually compete with the banks. So in order to reduce concentration, banks by regulation have to provide customer information to these organizations. How do they do that? It's sitting, this information is sitting on their backend systems. It resides in a number of systems. It resides in CRMs. It resides in databases. It resides in their ERP systems and in their ledgers. So we've helped banks consolidate data from these backend systems, isolate the backend systems so that they're not in any way at risk from external systems, and deliver the information that is required to these external fintech companies as services, so in a secure way, without actually impacting any of the bank's underlying operations. So that's also an interesting use case. You did mention also scalability, that you see trading volumes go up in financial services. This is also something that actually I think is very relevant to retail. We see retailers who have to scale phenomenally at specific times of the year. Of course, Christmas, Valentine's Day, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, those kind of retail hotspots. And many organizations have to scale and do a majority of their business in very, very short peak periods of time. And without the agility, the data-driven services to enable that, many of them can't keep up with that peak demand. So that's another area that where digital integration hubs can help.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's specific just on that point. You spoke earlier also about that these transactions have to happen in real time, and being able to dynamically burst performance to such a separate and fragmented array of systems, and to do that is I guess it's almost like trying to conduct an orchestra and ensuring that we have the the right areas across from that. So retail makes an impact on banking. All of those transactions are financial transactions. So in during those peak areas, absolutely. So how do we potentially mitigate the digital experience, and that real-time experience, and the digital integration hub can definitely impact or make a positive impact in relieving the pressure off of the legacy systems, right? And doing that, because that's part and parcel to that.
I've actually taken the opportunity now we've been talking a lot about a digital integration hub, and I think it may have been a bit of an abstract concept for many of our webinar viewers, but just so that you do know what we're talking about. Basically, we're talking about an architecture that consolidates data from backend systems. You can see here any kind of backend systems. These systems can be legacy systems, they can be mainframes, they can be MongoDB in the cloud. It can be any kind of system. And what we do is we replicate, first of all, we integrate the data and replicate it in a highly performant data layer using our proprietary in-memory data grid technology. which enables data to be available at any time. The Digital Integration Hub utilizes, it's an event-driven architecture, and it utilizes CDC technology to ensure that data being delivered from these backend systems is always fresh. And we've got, we can show you demos that you can see changes being made in the backend systems that are immediately reflected in our digital hub. So the hosting layer, the highly performing hosting layer, also allows you to actually build logic over the data. It's not only hosting; it also allows you to build logic and develop logic over this data. To create a unified data layer that consists of multiple sources. And then with a low code, you can expose this data and the business logic through API services to consuming applications. So what we're doing here actually is we're decoupling the digital applications, the front-end applications, from the back-end applications, reducing the reliance and the dependence on these back-end applications, so that you're not overloading them with excessive calls, and you're not dependent on downtime for maintenance and stuff like that, and also allows you to scale really linearly to support millions and millions of users concurrently on the front end. So this is in a nutshell. When I'd be happy to get your additional color on this as well, because I know that you're an expert. If you have any additional comments around the Digital Integration Hub.
Yeah, I think what was very appealing when we first started working with Gigaspaces and the smart DIH platform was just how simple the interaction with the platform was, and it was so simple that in the beginning I didn't actually fully understand how it actually did some of these things. So it kind of originally looked a little bit like magic, and I say that with all the respect and all of the constraints around that. But I remember in that demo sitting and one of your engineers took us through how from records from MongoDB and then from MySQL database and from a Microsoft SQL instance, certain tables and subsets of data was pulled into this space, this unified data space within the in-memory database, and with a single query, single SQL query. Now, was able to create a unified view of that, and then through a literally right click and creating a service, was able to expose a API that we could query through one of our applications, and that kind of flow and enablement and the way that it really turns a data engineer or data scientist into somebody that can actually deliver value at such a quick rate and such a very fast iterative rate without interfering with the underlying systems was quite remarkable, and that is why this is such a interesting and exciting new area, because the once you start understanding that and the possibilities that it gives you in terms of data mobility. I always talk about data having gravity. It's difficult to move data, out of systems into the cloud, back out of the cloud, making it available to different environments within your organization. Data has gravity, and really what this is doing, the smart DIH platform is doing, is it's allowing us to kind of give wings to the data and allow us to actually move and utilize it and turn it almost into something that is a bit more malleable rather than fully structured. So it feeds into your modern data lake. It feeds into your artificial intelligence platforms, and into your social platforms, or whatever way that you're doing this. And this, I mean, we're talking there at the bottom, it's kind of focusing on structured data environments, but NoSQL platforms are available. There's great examples of telemetry data being utilized and paired with structured data that drives full digital twin environments, and bringing that whole world of digital twins and actually being able to make it a reality in environments. And that's where I see stuff that's exciting, that we can transform industries and literally liberate those kind of layers of data, without impacting the underlying system. And it's really a way to innovate. So this, to me, is effectively an innovation kitchen where we can start cooking up some really, really great ways of utilizing our data as an ingredient to new solutions and new offerings to our customers.
I love the metaphor, and I love your enthusiasm.
I like cooking and eating, actually.
Actually, I like eating, but I don't like cooking. So I think we're just about at the end of our webinar, and I just wanted to give everybody a very, very quick overview of who Gigaspaces is. So Gigaspaces is a well and long established software house. We've been around for about 20 years, and our roots are in memory grid data solutions, which we've taken to the next level with our digital integration hub. As you can see, our customer base is really stellar. We help many Fortune 500 organizations run their mission critical services and applications on our technology. We mentioned during our webinar, we mentioned financial services, and you can see there are many financial services organizations here. Barclays, for example, is using us to run their worldwide trading operations. Same for UBS. We have organizations using us for fraud detection. All of these highly real-time use cases that rely on instantaneous data from multiple underlying sources. You can see here, American Airlines, for example, is using us for all of their global worldwide scheduling. So you can imagine what happens when there's a crew that's out, or a storm in one area of the world creates a terrible chain reaction where hundreds of planes need to reschedule, crews need to be scheduled. They also run their ticketing operations on our technology. So these are organizations that really rely on Gigaspaces for their mission critical and for the heart of their enterprises operations. We do have one question that has come up during the webinar, and it's actually quite interesting because it's something that we didn't really get to. It relates to education. So how does deploying a comprehensive data architecture framework help tertiary education institutions improve student learning outcomes and administrative efficiency? It's a bit of a mouthful of a question, and we've only got a few minutes left, so I'll try to answer as simply as possible, and happy to get your inputs as well, Werner. We've helped education, especially higher education organizations, become much more competitive by allowing them to interact with their students and their faculty in the digital age, I would say. Many higher education institutions, like other enterprises, have data stored in multiple systems, CRMs, backend systems, legacy systems, and they face competition. You'd be interested to hear that it's a highly competitive area. And the ability to offer an end-to-end digital experience, especially to students, from the moment that a student thinks about a university, for example, registering just to figure out what courses they would like, registering for an information day or kind of an exposure day, to the time that they actually become a student. There are multiple touch points, multiple digital touch points, and we've helped organizations build digital portals for their students, which offer this end-to-end student experience, from financial aid to tuition fees to course scheduling to everything that a student needs in order to interact with the actual university and with the staff in the university, the library, everything. So that's how we've helped higher education institutions. Werner, I don't know if you've come across any use cases in education.
I haven't per se come across any, but the principles in terms of, you know, the student being your customer, various faculties, the broadness of you know, what a university offers, outreach, you know, programs, and various different you know, aspects of interaction, like you say, those touch points, and making that experience for, you know, for a student, you know, in a unified way, one that adds value, you know, being able to understand that based on the subjects you're putting together or the courses that you're taking, what resources would be recommended, you know, through that, you know, and the ability to have you know, a much more, you know, integrated experience with you know, through those type of platforms is definitely something that you know, digital integration hub can facilitate, and where, you know, where those type of elements are there, and just, you know, just in terms of you know, just making, like you say, a process, you know, a repeatable process a lot simpler, you know, and across the board, you know, even at that level, it is definitely something that can drive efficiencies, drive a higher rate of interaction, and create a level of stickiness, you know, that you know, that will definitely attract you know, young minds who are looking for a modern way of doing things, a new way. You know, this is the way. You know, if you're still trying to fill in stuff with paper, you
It's
know,
gonna work.
it's a problem, you know, my mind, you know, but you know, and that's the thing, is we have to kind of understand where things are going, and how do we then, you know, broaden that out into you know, post student life, and how does the university still potentially play a role in that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think we're at the head of the hour, and it's been a pleasure having you with us today. Thank you. I hope
Thank
our
you.
guests enjoy the conversation.
Thank you
And
very
I think
much.
we'll wrap it up here. Thanks so much.
We really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to everybody who was listening and took the time to tune in. We really appreciate that. Thanks, Dan.